Guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have the final piece of the Mattel puzzle here, as it seemed like I was missing one figure from each of the most recent waves. I was missing the Bumpy from the Roar Attacks. I have now acquired and reviewed that. I was missing the Herrerasaurus from the Wild Packs. I have now acquired and reviewed that. And I was also missing the Sauropelta here from the Fierce Force, but as you can see, that is now finally here. Funny thing about this is Greg from Dino Scream was actually cool enough to find one in his area and hook me up with it. However, the same day he shipped it out to me, I found this one in store. So go figure that would happen. But anyway, at least I'll have a second, and I'll probably repaint that one, as I've been wanting to repaint one for quite some time. But we now have, again, the Sauropelta to take a look at, and we now have the greenish version, as we have previously had a reddish version from Mattel. You can see as far as the artwork goes, we have the, typical standard Dino Escape artwork with the packaging. And then if we turn it around, we've got a image here on the back of the Sauropelta showing off the action feature, as well as an image down here in the corner showing off the other figures in this wave. So let's pop this out of its box and take a look at it. And here is our Sauropelta from Mattel, the now green version. And I must say that it definitely looks quite nice. I actually love the paint scheme of this one, similar to the reddish version. It's nothing over the top or crazy. It's nothing too flashy, just a nice natural look, I would say, for the figure. It's a beautiful sculpt, just like it was the initial time. So that as well is a plus. I wish Mattel would actually release more species like this, because there's just so many to choose from, and they've barely even tapped into this family of dinosaurs, so I would definitely love to see them create more of them in the future. But I am still, regardless, quite happy to have a few different species from the family that we have gotten so far, like obviously the Sauropelta here before us and the Ankylosaurus. So let's go ahead, jump straight to a closer look at this fantastic looking Sauropelta right now. Now, the sculpt of this figure looks to be the exact same sculpt as the previous release of this dinosaur, so we don't really need to go over the sculpt anymore, because we have already done that in the initial review of the Sauropelta. If you would like to see a more detailed review of the sculpt itself, you can always check out the initial review from this dinosaur, which I will include a link to in the description. But what we need to look at on this one is basically just what's new with the figure in comparison to the previous one, and that primarily would just be the paint scheme. So you can see that we have a very nice dark green for the face and pretty much the entire majority of the upper side of the dinosaur. And they've painted the eye with a really nice kind of a light yellow and given it a black pupil, it seems. It's tough to tell. It might actually just be the dark green there in the background of the body, which I would prefer a black pupil. But with this, the eye is so small, it's actually hard to distinguish what coloration the pupil is, so it's not a big deal. But the eye itself, I will say, with that light yellow, really pops beautifully with the darker coloration around it, so that definitely looks quite nice. You can see that we also have a greenish beak, which probably isn't the best coloration for the beak of a dinosaur. I don't know that it would have had a greenish beak, but who knows, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it did. We then have an alternate variation of green here that you see start to pick up in the throat of our Sauropelta, moving back here throughout the entire underside. You can see the legs sport this alternate variation of a lighter green, the stomach region as well, the rear leg, and then moving back here toward the tail, but it cuts off very abruptly before we transition back to the dark green that we see on the upper side of the dinosaur. We do have a speckling, and the speckling appears to kind of be either a yellow or a light green. You could see it popping up here and there, like specifically in the foot right there. You could see it on the opposing foot right there. It's not super abundant, but it is definitely present on the figure. And before I go any further, there is the Jurassic Facts app code if you would like to add this to your collection. But again, looking over here at the opposing side, you can see how nice the paintwork is. The eye is a little sloppy on this side, but not bad by any means. And then, of course, for the spikes and stuff that we have up here, we have a very nice kind of an off-white bordering on a light gray coloration for those areas. So again, being a nice light coloration and potentially a realistic tone of color like that, it pops quite beautifully on the model. But I really wish that they would have painted this area, it would have been nicer visually, but at the same time, it's not, a deal breaker or anything. It's not terrible. You can see some of that darker green kind of show up down here in a few different areas on some like larger scales, almost like osteoderm like scales that we have here on the side. But really quite nice looking from a visual standpoint. Beautiful sculpt, of course, very nice, very highly detailed sculpt, but also a really quite nice looking paint application now for our second Sauropelta figure. As far as articulation, we have some really nice neck articulation. You can see the head is on a swivel, as is this area of the neck. So you actually have two different spots of articulation here in the neck, right behind the head and then right here in the neck. So you can move the head around pretty nicely. Not, the greatest, because we can't really move the head up or down too much. A little bit left or right, you can go a little bit, but it definitely works quite nice, and I do love that area of articulation. You also have the articulation here in the midsection, and you have articulation in the legs. The legs can actually come out away from the body as well. See the same deal back here for the rear leg, and then you have articulation in the tail, which isn't super awesome, but it's definitely there. And then the action feature itself is basically activated with the tail. So you're going to move the tail right here, and it's going to cause the dinosaur to basically strike with those spikes up here. Pretty much the type of action feature you would expect for a Sauropelta. As far as a size goes, for a length, you are looking at right around the a little over 6.5, actually closing in on about 6 3/4 inches, or about the 17 centimeter mark roughly. And then for a height, the highest point would probably be this spike right here, about 2.5 inches or 6.5 centimeters. Or if we go to the top of the head, you're looking at about just under 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Sauropelta. And you can see that, as per usual, the figure has not changed sizes or anything like that. It still remains a very small Mattel figure, and in fact, I would say it's probably one of the smallest that they have released overall. But at the same time, it sports a very nice, convenient size, and I am definitely a big fan of pretty much everything about this figure. The sculpt, the paint, and the size is all really quite nice. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous Dino Escape Fierce Force Sauropelta is definitely another fun release from Mattel. Not everyone is probably going to share that opinion, because not everyone loves repaints, and since this is the second time we've had this figure in the line, it obviously is a repaint, not a new species entering the line, but it's one of the species that I feel like has gotten, the least amount of love, because we have only had it once before, so it is nice to have a second variant out. At least it's not a Velociraptor where we have 4,000 of those. It is nice to get, an alternate paint variant of a species as cool as the Sauropelta. And the sculpt of this one is fantastic, really highly detailed as per usual when it comes to a Mattel figure. The paintwork as well is quite nicely done. Of course, it's pretty much like your standard Mattel paintwork where we don't have nail paint or anything like that. But other than those areas like the nails and stuff, we do have some really nice paintwork to the figure with some nice variations of green, and it all looks nice and natural, I would say, on the figure. There's no real sloppiness to the paintwork or anything like that, as it's all pretty well done, pretty precise for the most part, and definitely looks good overall on the figure. We also have some pretty fun articulation, which is nothing to, write home about, but it's definitely decent for the most part. I'm really quite the big fan of the articulation in the neck, because I like having more posability with my dinosaurs, and this one definitely sports a little bit more posability than many other Mattel figures, which is always a plus. On top of that, we have a pretty fun action feature that, as far as a playability standpoint goes, is definitely a fun one. Nothing to really complain about as far as that goes. It's, again, nothing that's amazing, but it's nothing that's bad. It's pretty much exactly what you would expect when it comes to a dinosaur like this, and the obvious way that it would defend itself as far as a toy figure would go. So overall, it's a really nice Sauropelta, yet again from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line, and a recommendation for sure from me if you are looking to get a second variant of the Sauropelta. This is a great choice on the part of Mattel to release it with this beautiful looking greenish paint scheme. Definitely a fan, again, of this really nice looking Sauropelta. I love the original one, definitely like this one as well. So if you are interested, make sure you check out your local Walmart or Target, as those are the areas that this figure has been showing up quite regularly. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.